Welcome to the Moonflower Path podcast. This space is for the highly sensitive, the creatives, the earth-loving, the caregivers, the weirdos, the feelers, the change makers, and dreamers of the world. Here, we are all about guiding you to trust your body intuition so you can find home and shift culture. Through the exploration of somatic practice, self-care, and seasonal ritual, my hope is that you will be inspired to be in harmony with yourself and in a dance with the earth. I'm your host, Carolyn, and I'm so honored and grateful to be here with you today. Hello, Moonflower, and welcome back to the podcast. Firstly, I'd like to say a big thank you for all your support and encouragement. Oh my goodness. The podcast already has a few ratings and one review. LOL, it's my wife, but I'm still taking the win. Thank you, Sarah, for your support. So please let this be a gentle reminder that if you've been enjoying this space and would like to support this work, then please leave a review. I'd love to read them out here and give you a shout out. I'm pretty sure that the only way that you can leave reviews is through Apple Podcasts. So if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, then it'll take a few extra clicks. But here we are. Okay, so today's episode is about seasonal living. What that might mean, how it might support you, and the ways we'll explore that here in this space, the Moonflower Path. Seasonal living is a blanket term I like to use when talking about living in alignment with the earth's wisdom, whether that be by honoring the seasons, the cycles of the sun, the cycles of the moon, or the elements, or there's like so many other examples. But it's truly about looking to the earth, learning about her wisdom, and I like to use feminine pronouns, but maybe you like to use they, them pronouns for the earth. It's up to you. And realizing that you too are of nature and that you can find more ease, connection, and flow, and many other things in acknowledging your own earthly wisdom and cycles. So let's explore this together. So in all honesty, this is a pretty massive subject. So consider this episode the doors opening to a room filled with conversation we will continue to have in this community for years to come. At its root, seasonal living is kind of a funny concept if you really think about it, because if we think of the way our ancestors lived, seasonal living was just called living. It wasn't a concept or a practice or a ritual. It was just the way things are. To keep track of the cycles of the moon, the changing of the seasons, the rhythms of the tides was a matter of survival. For example, the association with the rejoicing and communing of the full moon might stem from the realities that our ancestors didn't have electricity. So a full moon meant they could tend to their crops late into the night, gather by moonlight with fellow community members, and so on. Or to watch the tendencies of the animals and the birds allowed our ancestors to know when mating season was approaching, which meant that the ground would soon begin to thaw with the warming weather, calling time to plant new seeds, which is an association we now symbolically hold around the season of spring. So I believe that seasonal living isn't a new concept to learn. Instead, it's more of a remembering of what's already in your bones, your DNA, your tissues. To connect with the earth and her wisdom and her cycles is to connect with yourself. My own story around getting more passionate and curious about seasonal living began around 3 years ago. I'm very grateful. I was raised by parents who really instilled in us a love for being outdoors. A lot of camping trips, a lot of skiing adventures, and going out in every weather. But it was only really during the time that I was going through a big transition in my life that I referred to in episode number 2, that I really started to get curious about these cycles and these rhythms found in the seasons and the ways within which I noticed it inside of me and then how it might actually support me. So with all that to say, 3 years ago is pretty recent, so in no way am I an expert, and I hope that I can be one of many sources you turn to learn this wisdom. And over time, I'll share some of the resources that I personally use to learn from, like different books and all the things. These are teachings, though, that are known for and have been known for eternity by many much older cultures and groups of peoples, like the indigenous communities of any land who refer to the seasonal wheel, the Indian people who brought us the teachings of yoga and Ayurvedic medicine, the Chinese people who brought us the elemental wisdom of traditional Chinese medicine, the pagans and druids who brought us the wheel of the year, and the list goes on. By even recognizing this history here and now, it shows to what extent this way of turning to the earth is rooted in every culture, every human being, every animal, every living being on the earth, and that it is a coming back to our natural ways of being. So I live in Ontario, Canada, and our seasons are quite distinct. So the wisdom that I like to turn to and learn more about the seasons in is the wheel of the year. Since the seasons around my home are very similar to the ones that are found in the Wheel of the Year, we have very distinct 4 major changes in the seasons here. But it's less about turning to an abstract resource and then calling it your own. It's learning more about the seasons that you notice around your own home, learning more about the seasonal ways your ancestors would have lived, as well as the rhythms and cycles and seasons found in your own body and in your own life. To explain this a bit further, I'll use the seasons Canadians will be used to, maybe some Europeans and some Americans, and then folks in the Southern Hemisphere will know these seasons, but just kind of flipped in reverse, I guess. So this is a very quick overview of themes and energies that can be found in each season. Winter might be associated with beginnings, resting, dreaming, darkness, welcoming the light, the void before the creation, cocooning, tending to our foundations, rationing resources and energy. Some say earth element, some say water element, the new moon. Spring might be associated with rebirth, fertility, creativity, taking action, nurturing relationships, rising of energy, balance, planting seeds of intentions, air element, feeling the fear and doing it anyways, waxing moon. The summer might be associated with celebration, play, community, creation, exploration, curiosity, fun, sensuality, joy, abundance, a peak, a culmination, fire element, full moon. And the fall might be associated with harvesting, releasing, gratitude, self-care, slowing down, death, ancestor connection, waning moon and or dark moon. Some would say water element, some would say earth, rooting and returning to the earth, preparing for the upcoming winter. So those are very general themes, and you might have your own associations with the seasons, with your own associations with your own seasons that you move through. So this is just a very, very quick overview. But this is to illustrate that there's distinction between them all, right? And there's lessons and energies to be found within each season. And then within these seasons, there's the Wheel of the Year, which has roots and traditions in Slavic, Celtic, and Druid cultures, which attempted to be wiped by the rise of patriarchy and Christian influence, but has seen a massive rise in recent years. But honestly, the more research I do, the more blurry its origins become, so I'm still on a hunt to connect the dots and ensure that these traditions are rooted in places that are not being stolen. But all that to say that the Wheel of the Year comprises of 8 celebrations or festivals associated with the seasonal transitions that can act as like really helpful anchors and can like expand these energies and themes and lessons found in the seasons a bit more. So the 8 transitions are the winter solstice or Yule, Imbolc or midwinter, the spring equinox or Ostara, Beltane or mid-spring, summer solstice or Litha, Lammas, Lugnasad or midsummer, autumn equinox or Mabon, and Samhain or mid-autumn. Instead of going into great detail of each celebration, because I will be dedicating entire episodes and online guided rituals for you in the coming months, I'd like to simply share how turning to seasonal transitions can be helpful for your self-care journey. Now, knowing a bit more about the themes and energies and names of all of the things, you might begin to notice that there are correlations between them and cycles and rhythms you might go through inside your body. Over time, you might begin to observe that you move through times where you feel, let's say, a rise in energy and creative inspiration. Well, knowing that those are energies that might be associated with spring or summer, you could begin to turn to self-care practices that you would use in the spring or summer to help find ease and support with where you're at, like moving your body more, or nourishing your inner child with play, or gathering more with loved ones. Alternatively, there might be times where you in your body and in your life are moving through times of lower energy or creative stagnancy. Stagnancy not in a negative way, but just like a creative pause, which might be associated with fall or winter. You might then turn to self-care practices that you would use in the fall or winter, like cultivating more stillness, cleaning out your home, journaling more, eating more warm and comforting foods. And like it just goes on and on and on, and like it's distinct from each person, and it becomes such like an intimate exploration with yourself and with the earth and with the folks around you. Like I love to learn about what other people do in their own life, and I learn more about myself as the years go on. 2 summers ago, I was like super, not like harping, but just like very vocal of like the energies of the summer are all about play and moving more and having more fun and joy. And I then ended up moving through a summer where I was incredibly overwhelmed. I was moving way too much. The world felt very loud, very fast, very buzzy, very overwhelming. And my self-care practices turned into like sitting in the closet in darkness, of taking entire days where I was reducing the stimulation that was coming into my sphere, which might be very different to what other folks would do during the summer, right? So it just becomes this like really great opportunity to learn more about yourself, to practice attunement in terms of when you feel this, what might you need? And it might be different, or it might be the same of what like the seasons are saying, right? It's just like, oh, it's like really interesting play. So what begins to happen is that there's a sacredness to the seasonal transition. It becomes an opportunity to connect with your body, with spirit that lives inside of you and outside of you. Rituals come out just naturally as you greet the moon, the sun, the birds, the plants. Say your gratitude for them, have conversations with them. And it turns into a dance filled with steps that are remembered in your body and brand new steps that are created and come out of this relationship that you're creating. It turns into this beautiful way of being in flow with the way things are, instead of trying to push through, ignore, or maintain the same level of being and doing all the damn time, which is what society is constantly trying to convince you of, right? The other thing that I've gained along my own journey of seasonal living is the nurturing of my relationship with the earth, which has light and dark in it. Firstly, to have a seasonal celebration to be able to use as an anchor in this cyclical change can be a beautiful antidote to the overwhelm and stress that can be felt living in our culture that is built on oppressive and toxic systems. Secondly, we can use that same beauty, joy, celebration, hope, optimism to help fuel the inevitable sadness that comes along with connecting with nature. I will speak very intentionally with I statements here to be clear that this is my own experience. The more I've observed and used the seasons and all of nature as a teacher, the more I've noticed what is off. I can't ignore anymore that the winters here are far warmer than they used to be. I can't ignore anymore that the summers here are sometimes dangerously hot, which they didn't used to be. I can't ignore anymore that I see mosquitoes out in quite literally the dead of winter sometimes because they're all confused about the warmer weather fluctuation. I can't ignore anymore that the water levels are rising and the windstorms are increasing in frequency and destructive levels. Climate change is real and here and needing our attention. That's a really overwhelming thought and can get really paralyzing really quick. Yet, to use the love that I have for the earth as I've learned more about her and how similar her and I are can help me use that to fuel the energy it'll take to do right by her in any small way that I can. So it's a both and, lovelies. The more you move through a journey of connecting with the flow and alignment that can be found in seasonal living, the more you can't help but want to be a better steward for this land. And also, the thing that comes to mind here is also to be in better relationship with the original caretakers of the lands on which you live, right? You can't ignore that anymore. And honestly, as challenging and as dark maybe as that seems, it's also a beautiful thing. You have the ability to hold both those emotions inside your highly sensitive, creative, and earth-loving body. Your ability to feel both the light and the dark as deeply as you do are a gift. So I'd encourage you to get curious. What seasons, cycles, rhythms, and lessons are you noticing and feeling in the natural world around you and around your home? In what ways do you notice similarities in your own body and life? This is a lifelong journey. And if you're right at the beginning, oh my goodness, welcome. And if you're very familiar with all of this, I am so grateful that you are here and I can't wait to learn more from you. I encourage all of us to explore all of this with love and curiosity. I've brushed over in today's episode over general themes found in the seasons I'm familiar with and how you might find support in learning more about these themes. And I'd like to end with how you might find support and resources here in this community, in this resource, and this podcast, The Moonflower Path. Well, for starters, know that these concepts are the foundation of pretty much all that I share here. So there's that. But in a more specific way, there will be seasonal ritual episodes that come out around the Wheel of the Year celebrations. The classes you attend with me are themed around the seasons. I'm constantly learning new and different rituals from my own life and from new resources that are coming into my sphere that we will eventually begin to practice together in the upcoming The Moonflower Path community space, which launches in the spring, by the way. And lastly, know that I am like you. My teachings are offered through a lens of experiencing the world as a highly sensitive person and all that comes along with that. We can be social justice warriors with heart, slow living, and softness. So you will gain supports here on how to navigate the things when it gets to feel like too much to handle. And you will also be given space to feel just pure joy for all the earth and the seasons have to teach you. I am so grateful and honored and overjoyed that we get to walk alongside each other on this path. Moonflower. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Moonflower Path podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn, and ways that you can find more support from me and this cozy community are all found in the show notes. Please consider rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast with a friend. Those are the best ways to show your support for this free and accessible resource. Wishing you a gentle rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting again with you very soon.